From the St. Francis Yacht Club in San Francisco, this is the Wednesday Yachting Luncheon, hosted by Ron Young.
Welcome to the Wednesday Yachting Luncheon, live from the virtual grow room of the St. Francis Yacht Club. And when I say virtual, this year I really mean it, because I'm in Rome, Italy, having just attended yesterday wedding of my oldest daughter, Veronica, in a castle on a lake northwest of Rome. For decades, people have been belly aching about the Pacific Gyre. Turns out there are about 7 of these gyres, and I learned that fact by talking to Mary Crowley. She is a longtime friend and a brilliant global traveler. And as such, she's quite familiar with oceans of the world. She's been seeing firsthand the dangers of the biggest one in the North Pacific, pile of junk that's the size of Texas, which is swirling clockwise west of California, north of Hawaii. And after a while, she said, I'm tired of thinking about it, talking about it, and hearing people complain about it. I'm going to do a little bit about it myself. So she began going up to the gyre and collecting junk and bringing it back and disposing of it in a more productive way. So with that introduction, Mary, welcome to the Wednesday Yachting Luncheon.
We did a quick trip from San Francisco back to Honolulu and brought in right around 50 tons. We did a longer trip, Honolulu to San Francisco, and we brought in 96 tons. So it was quite a haul we unloaded in Sausalito. The whole town was down there watching. So it was a great and very happy event to bring that much garbage out of our ocean.
So show us your deck and tell everybody the great story, because I'm so proud of you as a friend who's doing something so significant for this big problem.
Okay, this is a favorite shot of mine because it was our real beginning back in 2009. And the vessel in the foreground is the Brigantine Kaisei, and we had a great group of famous sailors on board and also a group of 6 scientists. And then in the background was the Scripps student vessel, New Horizon, which we funded for a week out in the Gyre. So we did lots of science on this first trip, and it was our goal to really see what was happening.
People might want to also notice that that's a brigantine there. I had the good pleasure of sailing on Kaisei with Mary. We just had a show about schooners and brigantines recently, so it's great that you have a beautiful sailing boat in front of us.
Thank you. One other thing to note, this shot doesn't look like it, but it's around 900 miles off the coast. And in the kind of conditions we really look for to spot ghost nets and to clean them up, always looking for calm weather, high pressure areas that are found within the area of the most debris distribution.
When you say 900 miles offshore, which shore were you referring to?
The California shore.
So in addition to Ocean Voyages, your company, Mary, tell us about the Ocean Voyages Institute, the nonprofit, the 501c3 that you've set up.
Yes, I've always cared a lot about oceans. Within Ocean Voyages Institute, we did a lot of sail training voyages for young people, a lot of marine science education. And we did these things all over the world and cooperated with many schools and universities. But then somehow, as you expressed, Ron, from sailing all over the world, saw what was happening in terms of more and more plastic garbage in our ocean. And thus we began the 2009 voyage you saw the slide of. We followed that up by another voyage in 2010. We started a think tank of naval architects and marine engineers and oceanographers to figure out from the data we found in our expeditions the best ways to do cleanup. We did a lot of good experimentation with different methods of removing debris. We worked looking for some of the tsunami debris. And then starting in 2019, we started doing major cleanups. Sailing is really the best way to do ocean cleanup. Along the way, we also developed GPS satellite trackers, which we have vessels of opportunity tag for us. So we'll give them these trackers. And when they're sailing across the gyre area, and they see ghost nets, they can launch their dinghy and they can use the carabiner to attach them. And then we can track the debris in real time. And when our cleanup vessel goes out there, it can find them. This is one of the early voyages. There I am with Melanie and Norton Smith, and we were experimenting with different devices of biomimicry and looking at ways to clean up microplastics. And we actually have some promising ways we can further develop to do that, that we think could help that situation. Beginning in 2019, we wanted to expand our cleanups, and we used a great sailing cargo ship that had a large cargo hold and a great boom. And even though we just had 25 days of the vessel's time, we had our GPS satellite trackers deployed on nets. And I'm pointing out in the photo the white ball with my cursor, and that's one of our GPS satellite trackers. In that expedition, we brought in 84,000 pounds. Later in October, we removed several large nets from reefs in Kaneohe Bay, which the people there were very happy because these nets were killing the reefs. Then, even though it was pandemic time, in 2020, we managed to run 2 expeditions and to set a record in terms of amount of debris removed from mid-ocean, with 340,000 pounds of debris between the 2 trips. In 2021, at the invitation of the Costa Rican government and also welcoming from the Panamanian government, we did a cleanup mission exploring the waters of Central America. And we look forward, as we get vessels year-round, to doing our summer season in the gyre area, the North Pacific Subtropical Convergence Zone, and doing winter seasons down in the Costa Rica, Panama, Ecuador, Colombia area. This year, we've had quite a successful cleanup season, going from Honolulu to San Francisco on one voyage, and San Francisco back to Honolulu on another, 71 days of cleanup and 292,000 pounds. A big part of our cleanups is also educating people about the issue. The news of our trip started, in the local areas, but spread throughout the country and throughout the world. So we reached over 600 million people. And I thought I would take the opportunity to show you some of the news coverage which we have.
This is Hawaii News Now Sunrise at 6.
And now a ship returns from a massive garbage cleanup mission today. Our Casey Lunn reports from Honolulu Harbor. Good morning, Casey.
Hey, good morning, Steve. A beautiful morning here at Honolulu Harbor. I want to introduce Mary Crowley, founder of the Ocean Voyages Institute, and the Kauai behind us. Mary, tell me just a little bit about the mission of this vessel. You guys just returned to harbor here, 48 days at sea. What have you been doing?
Well, we've been cleaning up ghost nets and various consumer plastics out of what's known as the North Pacific garbage patch, though I always prefer to call it the gyre, etc., because I feel like the garbage patch makes it sound small,
Yeah.
and in fact, it's a huge issue.
Yeah, it really, the scope of this problem, and we're seeing the derelict fishing nets and the other plastics that you guys are able to remove. You were telling me before we got on, hold on. Jared, hold on, buddy. I think they want to get, I'm going to have our cameraman back up here. There's work going on. We better get out of the way, Mary. But you said that in the hole there is almost completely full. You guys really have to come drop this off. Tell us what happens to those nets now that we're back here in Honolulu.
Yes, well, thanks to Matson Line and their assistance, they're shipping nets to Oakland and to Los Angeles. And in Oakland, we're processing the nets into fuel because, of course, plastics are a lot.
Yeah, and I can't remember the figure, but when I was telling you we were out at Ford Island and they show us all those plastics and how much just the derelict fishing nets alone could power. So, Mary, you guys are going to set back out to sea, but in order to really continue this mission, what do you need?
We need more money.
Yeah.
We, in this time of COVID, we've been very careful on our first voyage and will continue. We had the crew quarantine for 3 weeks. We had new people joining quarantine. We tested. But health of the ocean is helpful to our own health.
How can people connect with you? Because we are running out of time. We'll talk again with Mary at 7:30, but how can folks connect?
Ocean Voyages Institute.org, O-R-G. And people can donate there. You can find our phone number. You can volunteer. You can follow along. So Ocean Voyages Institute.org.
Very good. Mary Crowley, thank you so much for the work you're doing and for spending a little time with us this morning. We'll have a little bit more coming up at 7:30. For now, you're watching Sunrise. We'll take a short break and be right back.
Back from a trip to clean up the Pacific Ocean. We'll talk with the crew about the hundreds of thousands of pounds of plastic they pulled from the water.
This is KTVU Fox 2 News at Noon.
A crew from Sausalito is back in the Bay Area after cleaning up hundreds of thousands of pounds of plastic waste from the ocean. Today, they're working to get it recycled into products we all might use one day. KTVU's Amanda Quintana in Sausalito to show us this cleanup effort.
This crew with Ocean Voyages Institute spent 45 days out at sea collecting those bags and bags of plastic that you see right there. It was polluting the ocean between California and Hawaii, an area known as the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. Now it's all being unloaded and put into these containers to be sent off to be recycled. That is one of many bags. On this recent trip, they collected 200,000 pounds of plastic, adding up to 700,000 pounds that they've removed from the ocean in the last 4 years. This includes items as small as toothbrushes and as big as abandoned fishing nets that kill marine wildlife and need a crane to remove them.
The ocean is now being besieged by plastic waste, and so we have to do everything we can to change that. Having a healthy ocean makes a big difference to ocean life, and it makes a big difference to our own health.
This is a cleanup effort that has happened every year since 2009, all paid for by donations. The Ocean Voyages Institute has been leading the way using GPS trackers to help remove plastics, and in 2020, they completed the largest cleanup in history, 340,000 pounds.
We're going to try our best to collect and try to finish all the trash that's just been around there in a dryer. So we're going to try our best to collect them all.
Now the plastic moves on to the next step in the process. These big containers will be shipped to a recycler in Long Beach. All the waste will be turned into products or used for art projects. The good news is that none of this goes to a landfill or a dump. All of this plastic will get a new life. In Sausalito, Amanda Quintana, KTVU Fox 2 News.
They're really dramatic, Mary. They show the story.
Yes, that's what both of them are, sort of different and important. And I think they show that we are a story. One of our much valued partnerships in our work is with Matson Navigation, and they've been helping us deliver our cargoes of ocean debris, ocean plastics to proper upcycling, recycling centers. And so they've been providing transportation. And this was a very nice article done in their Matson newsletter to all their employees, and a wonderful quote by Matt Cox, the chairman and CEO, saying, "We've been impressed with the groundbreaking efforts of Ocean Voyages Institute and the progress they've made with such a small organization, and we hope our support will help them continue this important work." And we have a continuing close collaboration between Ocean Voyages Institute and Matson Navigation that we very much value. These next shots are really just trying to give the yachtsmen and others involved a sense of what it's like out in the gyre. You see, when we pick up nets, they usually contain a lot of consumer debris, as well as the skeletons of all sorts of things like turtles and swordfish and tuna. We spread out the nets to dry, then we bag them and we put them in the cargo hold. But as they're drying, you really see the wide variety of our garbage that we find mid-ocean. This shows, once again, the nets underwater as we're finding them a little bit on the surface, and we move them to the boat, usually with our dinghy. The boom on this vessel is a crane and has the ability of lifting 4 tons, but we can add pulleys and we can lift nets gradually. We've gotten nets that have been as big as 10 tons out with this vessel. This is talking about another one of our wonderful and successful collaborations. It's a NASA-funded group that is very multidisciplinary. It contains lots of physical oceanographers, biologists. As you can see, it's all like the University of Hawaii, the Smithsonian Environmental Research Center, Scripps, University of Washington. And I'm very honored to have Ocean Voyages Institute be the nonprofit partner of all these other institutions. And at first, I wasn't sure what I could contribute to this group of PhD scientists, but they began to call me their eye on the waters, because I have had the honor of spending more time at sea than any of them. And so I had more information than I realized about how our ocean operates and things one sees at sea. And I've learned a lot from all of these people, and they've learned from each other. So it's been a wonderful collaboration, and we will continue collaborating, I think, over many years. This is showing some of the work between Ocean Voyages Institute and the University of Hawaii, specifically Nikolai Maximenko and Jan Hofner. They are the experts in the world of modeling debris distribution in the Pacific. We began our collaboration in 2009, and here in 2022, it's going stronger and closer than ever. And we've discovered that when we tag these nets, the nets and their computer modeling coincide very well together. So it's kind of proving both systems. And this shot shows different nets that we've had tagged, and the map in the middle shows the trajectory of these nets. And we're all learning a lot about debris distribution by these GPS satellite trackers that we've been deploying. And each satellite tracker is really like a beacon to an area of debris, because the ocean has a way of sorting things. You'll be out there in the middle of the gyre and you'll come across 4,000 laundry detergent bottles spread over like 5 miles. And this isn't because they were dropped in the water together. It's because the ocean currents kind of put things of similar shapes and sizes together over many years. But this means that the same thing happens with nets. So where we have one net tagged, we can use spotters in the rig and drones and find quite a few other nets within like a 10, 12 mile radius of the tag net. These trackers have really been a generation of lots of fascinating oceanographic information. And this is just showing another shot at sea, the dinghy heading towards the net to bring it back to the ship to be removed from our ocean. This shows one of our trackers, and it shows a biological panel that we deploy for Smithsonian, so they get records of what is growing on the nets. We deploy them with our trackers. Sometimes I get so excited about talking about our progress because it feels so amazingly wonderful to be on board and seeing these huge tonnage of debris removed from the ocean, which is really saving the lives of all sorts of whales and dolphins and turtles and fish and reefs, that I forget to really mention how terrible the toll is on our ocean. In fact, the United Nations has put out a frightening, but I believe unless we do massive cleanup and other changes will be true statistic, that by 2050, that there will be more plastic in the ocean than sea life. And it's my goal to see that statistic not happen. We have a lot of time between now and 2050, and we are doing well with our cleanups, and with everyone's help, we can certainly see that statistic never be fulfilled. There are 5 different categories of debris, and we have solutions for all of them. The one we're working on currently, the large nets, because they are so destructive. Another important category, which is here in the lower right, is consumer debris. And we pick up quite a bit of that on our expeditions, but we also can work on different ways to utilize small and large fishing vessels to fish for this plastic consumer debris and remove it. Upper right, albatross has variety of small items that have been fed to it and that have killed it. And also crushed plastics fall in this category. And we can use oil skimmers to do good collection of this type of plastic. And then in the lower left, you see a screen with some of the microplastics we've collected in trawls. And going back, you saw some of the biomimicry devices that we can use to help collect microplastics.
Mary, on the upper right, that albatross. So it looks like, unfortunately, the albatross has eaten lots of pieces of little plastic, whereas he might have been normally thousands of years before this, an albatross would eat something in the ocean. It was biodegradable. He could eat it, digest it, and live. But what you're showing us is that when an albatross eats a piece of plastic that is waste, it goes in his stomach and it never gets digested. It never goes anywhere until pretty soon this unfortunate albatross has a stomach full of inedible, horrid pieces of plastic.
Exactly, Ron. And that's the same thing that happens to whales and dolphins and sea turtles and fish. A lot of the large pelagic fish have very small stomachs and all sorts of different bird life. So when plastic gets stuck in the stomach of any of these creatures, they die because they starve to death. You know, they find young whales that are 2 years old that are totally healthy, other than their poor stomachs get full of plastic and they starve. Removing plastic from our ocean is very important habitat restoration that has to be done for our ocean creatures. But a lot of people don't realize that the ocean produces, people say, 2 out of 3 breaths that we take. And so keeping a healthy ocean influences the health of all of us. And it's not only the sea creatures, it's our own health.
When you say 2 of 3 breaths, how do you mean that? You mean in terms of food, in terms of oxygenation, in terms of?
In terms of oxygenation, I mean, it was, we all learned that rainforests were important to creating oxygen, and they are. But the ocean is the most important because the ocean covers so much of our planet. And when one asks my dear and wise friend, Sylvia Earle, you know, what's the most important thing that has to change for oceans? And she says, ignorance. Here is just some more shots showing the derelict fishing gear that we concentrate on and trackers. And we do use drones as well as people in the rig to keep finding more and more nets. This is just more examples of the consumer plastics. And people are always shocked when people are out on the vessel with me. People are saying, wow, that looks like my garbage. People feel a very close connection to seeing their garbage in what should be a pristine oceanic wilderness. Here is sort of a sense of oil skimmers and all the types of things that can be used. A lot of people think they're doing a good thing when they crush plastics, but in fact, it's a bad thing because it makes the plastics degrade sooner, and so it creates microplastics more easily.
When you say crushed plastics, you mean when they crush an empty water bottle? Is that what you're saying? And they throw it in the water?
Yes, that could be an example of a personal action, but I'm thinking more there are places where they have plastic crushers. Some ships have crushers. It's a way of making plastics easier to store or smaller, or people think less noticeable. And crushing plastics is not a good solution. The 5th category of debris is river debris, which of course we can use oil spill technology to address river debris and keep that debris from coming out into our ocean.
You use these big skimmers that go across the edge or the mouth of the river so that as the water would be flowing out the river, you skim off the plastic garbage and don't allow it to go out into the ocean. Is that how that works?
Exactly, exactly. Here's a skeleton of a swordfish, which is a good example of the types of skeletons we find in the nets. We rarely find anything alive other than little crabs, and we try to shake any little crabs or any life off of the nets as we pull them up. But there are lots of microplastics in the ocean, and that is something we intend to address as we get more of a handle and more scope on cleaning up the larger plastics. Here is examples to give you a sense of the range of things we find. In the left-hand photo, this was one of the mystery items we found in the gyre. You know, it was a large floating, we don't know if it was part of a ship or part of a shore-based facility that got washed out to sea or exactly where it came from. But we did find a lot of strange, larger pieces that we removed from the ocean. At one point, we thought of doing a show of these in newspapers to see if anybody could identify what they were, and we may do something like that down the way.
That looks like a table. What are those items attached to it? Are those barnacles forming on some object?
Those are barnacles, because this was larger than a table. It was more like a room. It was a pretty big piece of debris. We were certainly happy to remove it from our ocean. Then on the right-hand side, it shows sort of the size of the nets that we see. Some of the nets are quite long, so we really get major pieces of netting. These are just more photos showing the range of debris. These are all different. We're constantly drying out, putting in the hold, and adding new debris. This shows when we dried out the debris, we put them into these bags to store them in the cargo hold, and it makes it very easy to remove the debris from the cargo hold and send it to the various upcyclers, recyclers, repurposers that we work with. It's an important commitment of ours that none of the garbage we removed goes to landfill and none of it goes back into the ocean. So this shows us pulling up another net. This is from my good friend, Ron Holland, who, as he and I were studying a bunch of our photos, he likened the ghost nets to icebergs because you see them on the surface and you have no idea how deep they may go. Some of them could go 50 feet down and some of them go 3 feet down. The netting can be of a wide range of sizes. Those are some tuna. This is the only time we've actually photographed quite a few tuna that were trapped in this net. 3/4 of them were dead. A few of them were able to get loose, but usually you don't see this because they get eaten by things or they rot. So as I said, usually we have skeletons, but this actually showed what this was doing to this group of tuna. This is one of my saddest shots. The sea turtle got entangled in that orange net, and then the orange net got entangled in probably another 8 nets around it. So this poor guy had no hope. Our ocean creatures shouldn't have these monstrous killing ghost nets out in their habitat. I was talking about what we do in terms of upcycling, recycling, repurposing. There's a firm by the name of Bifusion that is putting out a special line of products they're doing from Ocean Voyages Institute's ocean plastic. I'll show you some of those, but we also have worked with Resynergy, turning plastic to fuel. In Czechoslovakia, there's a company doing plastic to medical supplies. We've worked a lot with H-Power in Hawaii that works closely with NOAA, making plastic into energy. And we're exploring plastic use in roads and in roofs. And we work with a lot of artists and museums who use plastics for displays and artwork, and always putting out an educational message about what's going on in our ocean. This is Bracenet, a company in Germany that deals with some of the smaller plastics and make everything from keychains to dog leashes. This shows some other recycled, upcycled plastics. This is showing the recent 7th International Marine Debris Conference that was in Busan, Korea. And these are our different collaborators. On the right picture is the Australian team that are distributing the sea bin that cleans harbors. And then on the left photo is Cara Lavender Law, who's one of the top scientists with SEA, and they collaborated with us this last summer on launching some of our GPS satellite trackers and doing observations for us. And it was kind of fun because I was one of the staff on board Westward One, which was the first voyage of that organization. And so it's fun to be continuing collaborations. This was the first marine debris conference that had been held outside the US, and it ended up with lots of people from Europe and throughout Asia. We were the main ones doing solutions mid-ocean, and the Dutch ocean cleanup science staff were there. And it was interesting to meet them, but there was a lot of wonderful positive meetings. I met a lady from Myanmar who sort of said to me, "Wow, I thought I'd never meet you. I've been devoting my life to cleaning up coastlines and beaches, and it's all what I've learned from you on the internet." So that was quite a wonderful and surprising meeting. I'm here at the end to just talk for a moment about where we're going from here. We really believe that the way the ocean should be cleaned up is by sailing cargo ships. The difference in cost from using a sailing cargo ship to a motor ship is huge. And one of the secrets to being successful in the gyre and cleaning up is going slow enough so that you spot things. And under sail, you can really control your speed very well. And so we are going to be launching a capital campaign for building 2 sailing cargo ships. And Ron Holland is going to be involved with us in design. And we see these 2 ships as leading the way to global solutions, because they will be purpose-built, very simple ships, but with all the right equipment to be excellent at picking up debris. And then we will be able to share these designs with other groups throughout the world. So I envision us having a fleet of these vessels operating in the Indian Ocean, the Atlantic, and different groups behind them. You know, I've always felt there's not enough collaboration between nonprofit organizations that have similar purposes. And I feel these ships could create a wonderful collaborative effort where we would share our methodologies, we would share breakthroughs, and we'd be addressing the issue on a global level as it should be addressed. This is just showing people where you can find us, oceanvoyagesinstitute.org. And of course, we're on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. People always ask where our funding comes from. And, you know, a lot of it comes from friends and associates within the maritime industry, and a lot of ocean lovers. And, you know, Ron Holland is a contributor. My brother contributes. A lot of wonderful family foundations that seem to understand the importance of oceans, forward-thinking companies, and a lot of individuals who know they're making a difference. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And I'm thrilled to answer questions. Ron, you always have very good questions.
First of all, I want to just reiterate how happy all of us who are in the ocean, who go sailing and who recreate on our beautiful oceans, have to be to hear that a citizen has basically taken upon herself to do something about this really global problem. Companies can help by contacting Ocean Voyages Institute. And there's lots of ways they can help. They can help fund trackers. They can help fund some more research. They can help fund collaboration among the different scientists who are interested in your subjects. How can sailors help?
Currently, those that are sailing back and forth between the West Coast and Hawaii, or Hawaii and the West Coast, can take our GPS satellite trackers and use them to actually tag ghost nets, or can easily, if they don't have a good dinghy or they don't feel comfortable launching that, they can spot these things and photograph them and give us the latitude and longitude. But the tagging itself is the most important. People doing more extensive cruising can be in touch with us. There's some areas that water sampling can be useful. There's some areas, photography. We're finding out more and more the sort of observations that sailors are able to offer can make a big difference to ocean science. We're sort of a clearinghouse for connecting sailors with what they can do to help ocean science without really changing their own enjoyment. They can just do a little recording, a little photography, a little tagging, and it can make a big difference to our projects. And I think sailors like yourself also understand more deeply than most people the importance of cleaning our ocean. I mean, we don't want an ocean filled with our garbage. We want to be a more evolved civilization that pays attention to disposing their garbage responsibly and to not having it destroy the wonderful habitat of the ocean. Sylvia Earle is always expressing, we're destroying things before we even understand them. I think it's very important we restore ocean habitat.
So how big are the trackers? And people can get them by going to oceanvoyagesinstitute.org and asking for them?
Yes.
And how much do they cost at this early stage?
They weigh, with their tether and carabiner, they weigh about 7 pounds. Yes, they can, contact us. And if they're going to be sailing in an area where we're going to be having cleanups happening, they can really help us by doing tagging.
Okay, so now to tag, that sounds like the current method is they get down close in the water to where the debris is, and they snap the carabiner that's attached to the tracker onto the junk. That's how they do it?
Yes.
It's kind of like a spear that's got lots of barbs on it. So if you threw it like a dart into the trash, it could go deep into the trash and then stick there just as well as if it had been carabinered in there, because it can't come back out with the barbs. Who's working on the technology to make tagging easier?
We've been looking at that since the beginning. And so, we probably will develop something like that. But a couple of concerns is, when people are tracking, are clipping the trackers on, we always tell them to try to do it on parts of the net that are floating well, that have floats around them, because nets have a way, a lot of times we'll find a net ball and our tracker will be right in the middle of it, which is okay. But if the tracker gets pulled underwater, it will stop broadcasting. Now, if it surfaces again, it'll start broadcasting. But, we want things to be clipped on in the way that they have the best chance of continuing to broadcast and provide us with the important information and the route to go and pick them up. So It's both that and the trackers are fairly valuable by the time you put in sales tax and shipping, and they're around $1,500 each. Of course, when we pick them up, we are able to reuse them by putting in new batteries and new things. And so, we're constantly reusing the ones we have and getting more because they are such a wonderful tool on our cleanup missions. As we will continue getting more of them, we're looking towards ways that could save us a couple $100 initially and maybe more over time. Volume will allow us to get more reasonable pricing.
So the trackers float, they have a float, they float naturally, but
Yeah.
they don't transmit when they're underwater. Is that what I've learned from what you said to me just now?
That's right.
Now, at $1,500 a crack, it would be, how would a yachtsman who wants to have a tracker, would they have to invest $1,500 times 3 trackers or 2 trackers? Or what's a way that a yachtsman can get a tracker to help you?
Well, we will be happy to give them the tracker. If they use it, that's great. And if they aren't able to find the right nets, we of course ask them to return it to us, because sometimes a boat will get in a great area and it'll deploy 2 or 3 trackers, and sometimes they won't see anything. And, our trackers may sail across 2 or 3 times before they get deployed. It's all important. I mean, if they keep going, they'll get deployed. And
How many trackers have you deployed so far?
I should know that number. We have currently around 70 trackers. They have been deployed multiple times, because we keep bringing them in and redoing them and using them again. We've tracked quite a few nets. We have some grant applications out that I hope will have us buying another 150 trackers, because we really feel that they're a great gateway to very efficient cleanup of these nets. So we want to use them more and more.
So I'm eager that companies will help you fund research to improve and enhance your overall technology. I will just remind our viewers that at the beginning of DSL, which is the major means for internet access worldwide, back in the late 90s, I was at a company that was the first to deploy DSL in America. And at first, everybody had DSL, had to buy a $1,500 box, essentially a modem and demodem, and they had to buy one of these boxes to have DSL. And we got the cost of that down over a couple of years by having multiple suppliers bid against each other down to like $30. And we got that down in about a year and a half. And then we got other big tech companies like Intel to ultimately put these modems, demodems into the motherboard, laptops and computers. And when that happened, the ability for people to get online just completely mushroomed, and they got really, really, really big. And pretty soon that technology, which cost $1,500 in 1996, got down to being less than $1 by 2002. It's really, really important that your research advance rapidly, because you got a big mission ahead of you and you inspire lots of people to want to help. I see that one of the things that you got to be able to do is to get the trackers to be easily deployable by lots of people conveniently, and the cost real low. Hypothetically, I can imagine some way that you might be able to do it with much higher levels of technology, with scanners and things like that. So I look forward to people contributing to your organization and offering technological help as well. Scalability is got to be the key word when it comes to cleaning up the oceans, since it's a giant problem.
Absolutely. But one of the wonderful things about our trackers, I mean, we could get cheaper trackers, but these trackers are designed with special algorithms that allow them to keep broadcasting. They're sort of guaranteed to broadcast for a year, but we have in fact had some out there for a year and a half or longer. And having that ability, it kind of takes a toll on their batteries when they go underwater for a week. and then they come back up and then they go underwater again. But these last amazingly well out there. People are always amazed. And so we don't go for the cheapest, we go for the ones that'll be the most reliable. But I think you're perfectly right. I think there's better ways of deployment. I mean, there's ways we could use drones to do deployment. We're removing hundreds of tons of debris a year. And, as we get more ships, those numbers will just multiply because our technologies are simple, but they're very scalable. That's what's important in this issue, is that we scale them up. And I would much rather really have 2 or 3 sailing cargo ships than one large motor ship, because we're wanting to compare results. We'll see if the large motor ship, with its increased speed ability and its increased ability to stow more nets. And one of the things we'll be doing is also removing some derelict vessels. Like every trip, we find some skiffs, and some coming from Fukushima, some coming from other places. And so we are picking up ships. We found a few ships out there that have been too big for us to pick up. Having a bigger vessel would allow us to do good cleanup of derelict vessels, which is important for sailors because nobody wants to run into a derelict, half-sunk ship with their nice yacht sailing along. So for all the sailors listening, we care about making it a better habitat for sailing, to not get your prop caught in nets, to not run into derelict vessels out there at sea. That's why we also welcome financial support and volunteer efforts by sailors, because this is your backyard, this is your territory. And that's why I'm working so hard. I mean, I love the ocean. I have loved sailing since I was 4 years old on Lake Michigan on my grandfather's little 26-foot wooden boat. My passion just grows over the years. I want to spend more time at sea.
Well, Mary Crowley, as a friend for 50 years, you have always inspired people with sailing, with big ocean voyages, and with this most impressive nonprofit effort to help people in a kind of roll up your sleeves way, clean up the oceans. We're very thankful you've been our guest on the Wednesday Yachting Luncheon. We hope that many of our viewers will contribute to the effort in your organization and the technology that you are pioneering. So thanks very much for being our guest on the Wednesday Yachting Luncheon.
Well, thank you, Ron. I've been thrilled every time I've had the honor of being part of the Wednesday Yachtsman's Luncheon. And I'm very proud of the current work we're doing. Really value support from fellow yachtsmen and from everyone, because cleaning up the ocean makes you feel good. I mean, our stuff should not be in the ocean. We can clean it up. This is something we can do and make a huge difference for ourselves and future generations. So thank you greatly for this opportunity. It's a pleasure and an honor.
Great. Thank you so much.
This has been a presentation of the Wednesday Yachting Luncheon.